So what do you think, Santa Yoda? Is this whole Disney Star Wars thing working out?
How you get so big getting food of this kind?
Hello, welcome in. Today we are going to be talking about some releases of Christmas past. I figured this is a good time to kind of reminisce on what the Disney era of Star Wars has been. It's been kind of an interesting road for a lot of us. I think there was a lot of uncertainty right when it happened, and I think instead of discussing a particular film, I want to discuss kind of what my journey has been with Disney Star Wars. So let's rewind to October of 2012. I was in my senior year of college, getting ready to face the world, which is code for I was terrified. Like I was about to go through this massive change in life. The training wheels were coming off. I was gonna go and be an adult and successful, and that went about as well as it went for anybody else, I think. It was a tumultuous time anyway, and at this point I was an avid Star Wars fan. I had been an avid Star Wars fan for my whole life, but I became an obsessive Star Wars fan in the lead up to Revenge of the Sith, and it was something that I'd kind of let go of, right? I was a fan of Star Wars. It wasn't going to leave me. The Clone Wars was amazing. You know, I was still getting regular Star Wars content. I was trying to keep up with the books of Legends as best I could. So it was still this kind of stabilizing rock for me in my life. And then the buyout happened, right? Disney bought Lucasfilm. And it might surprise a lot of you to know my reaction. If you're used to the kind of content we have on this channel, you might not expect it at all. I'm going to use language that's a little bit more blunt than I usually am here and say that I was pissed. There's just really no other way to describe how I felt. I felt like the rug had been pulled out from under me, and I couldn't believe it. I couldn't believe that it wasn't even just that Lucasfilm was sold. Like the idea of new Star Wars films and Legends being wiped out and new books coming out had me livid. I was upset, I was unhappy, and I didn't want any part of it. And I kind of stayed in that headspace for about a month after the announcement had happened. And I really wasn't sure how I felt. And I think part of it was because it hit me at a time when I was already going through a lot of change in my life. Whenever I see the rage that's still on the internet, I can understand it because I was there. As somebody who loves current canon now, I try not to hate on anybody who's just mourning the loss of Legends because I've been there and I felt that upsetness too. I was dragging my feet through the mud right there with you. I just didn't stay there. What happened was a series of things. One, like I said, after information had come out, see, the articles that were being released were not that great, right? Inevitably, anytime news about Star Wars gets reported by people who are not Star Wars people, they get it wrong. And at the time, even though I was a massive Star Wars fan and I was involved like on our forum site on Port Haven, I wasn't really in the Star Wars fanscape outside of that one outlet. So I wasn't reading, you know, Collider or Star Wars Newsnet. I wasn't following any of the big podcasts. So I was only getting my information from non-Star Wars people. And eventually somebody sat me down and explained that what happened was Disney now owns Lucasfilm in the same way they owned Marvel Studios. And I think somewhere in the back of my mind, I knew that Disney owned Marvel Studios, but I never really thought about it that way. I always saw the MCU as this thing that Marvel makes, and at the time, and I still am, I was in love with that series. And when I realized that Star Wars was probably going to be treated in the same ways that the MCU was being treated, I calmed down. I was still apprehensive, but I calmed down. See, most of what I'd been reading made it sound like Disney bought Lucasfilm and dissolved it, and Lucasfilm wasn't going to be around anymore. And I was just coming off of the announcement that Kathleen Kennedy was going to be in charge of Lucasfilm, and I was so happy, and part of it was probably because I was in school and I just didn't have time to keep up with everything, but I was like, man, they just got Kathleen Kennedy in charge, and now she's not in charge of it anymore, and they're just going to be like pumping out movies with Zac Efron in them, and I just wasn't happy about it until I figured out what was really going on. It was simply who owned the company that was changing, but the company was remaining intact. And at that point is when I became open. I was still not happy about it, but I stopped being mad about it. And I mean, I was mad about it. I was one of those people that like told anyone that would listen how mad I was about it. But I just didn't stay there. Flash forward to December. I believe it was December. They made the announcement on who would be directing episode 7 of Star Wars. And it was going to be J.J. Abrams. Now, If you have a mixed opinion of J.J. Abrams, that's fine. I freaking love J.J. Abrams. I adore the man. Lost was a good show, but I really started to like him because of the show Fringe, which is phenomenal television. And the movie Super 8 is a movie I could watch on loop and just speaks to me at such a deep level I can't really articulate. So the idea that we were going to get Star Wars J.J. Abrams washed away any rage I had. And I was still nervous, but I was looking forward to it. The idea of J.J. Abrams making a Star Wars movie had me floating on air. I was like, all right, we're gonna go for it. This is gonna be a thing, and let's do this. And I was excited. So then let's fast forward a little bit into the future. Not quite a year, but almost a year. In September of 2014, a book was released called Star Wars: A New Dawn by John Jackson Miller. This was a book that introduced Kanan and Hera, who would be main characters on the show Star Wars Rebels, which would start just a month later. Again, I wasn't sure how I felt about a new Star Wars book canon. I was really attached to the old canon. I hadn't even finished all of the old canon, and I think what made me more upset than a new universe is the idea that the old universe wasn't getting a send-off, that it was just done. Star Wars The Clone Wars was abandoned because of understandable reasons with licensing and that sort of thing, but I was still upset about it, and to this day the Old Republic remains in this canon limbo. It's not canon, but they don't really want to say that because they want you to keep playing the game. I wasn't sure how I felt, but the first new canon novel was going to be written by John Jackson Miller, and John Jackson Miller basically was Legends, at least if you were my kind of Legends, because I was reading a lot of the Old Republic stuff. John Jackson Miller wrote the Star Wars comic for Knights of the Old Republic, he wrote the Knight Errant series and book, and he wrote, the Kenobi novel. He's written so much for Star Wars that leading with somebody who was just so old hat to the universe felt great. And so I was like, you know what, I'm gonna read this book. And you want to know what? It was really good. I really enjoyed it. And if you haven't read it yet, I highly recommend you do. And then Rebels came out, and it was good. I wasn't in love with it in the first season in the way that I am now by the time we got to the fourth, but I was confident because I knew that I felt the same way about the Clone Wars, and I gave it a shot. The season 1 finale of Rebels, when Ahsoka shows up, I lost it, and I was in. I was ready for it. And then we get into 2015 and it's all over, or rather it's all just starting. We get to The Force Awakens, and The Force Awakens was everything I wanted it to be. And it might be hard to remember today with what we see online today, but when The Force Awakens came out, it wasn't everyone's favorite. A lot of people thought it was too derivative. A lot of people thought it didn't do anything new or exciting. I didn't want new or exciting. I wanted safe. I wanted to feel like Star Wars in the hands of somebody other than George Lucas could still feel like Star Wars, and that's what I wanted. I remember sitting in the theater and seeing the scroll and seeing the line, Luke Skywalker has vanished, and from that line on the scroll, it had me. It had me by the heart, and it wasn't letting go. I embraced it. I embraced every part of new canon. I was like, I'm here. I'm here for the Disney era. I'm all about it. And then a year later, we got Rogue One, and Rogue One is a great film. For those of you who know my more unfiltered offline opinions, it's not my favorite, but I don't have any ill will towards it and has some of my favorite characters. But to me, what Rogue One did more than my own personal enjoyment of the film was it opened the doors for where Star Wars could go on screen. And it said that Star Wars doesn't have to be about these characters that everyone knows, that it can just be about the galaxy. What Rogue One represented was so important to me. It made me feel so good as a fan. And then, Rebels continued to be great, the books continued to be great, the comics continued to be great. And then we get all the right way around to last year, and we get The Last Jedi. I don't really know how to articulate it other than I'm just hopeful. And even if you didn't like The Last Jedi, that's fine. I've been a big believer that we really shouldn't judge how good the sequel trilogy is until we've seen all 3 pieces. Whatever you have to say about it, I'm not going to sit here and tell you it's a perfect film, but we're getting movies where people care and people try really hard. Coming from being the person that was terrified that we were going to see Mickey Mouse as a Jedi, and seeing what we're seeing on screen now, I'm all in. I'm into Resistance. I'm into anything I can get my hands on. I haven't even read and watched everything that's out, just because of time. You want to know what else I haven't done is I haven't given up on Legends. It's all still here. I still read the old books. I still watch the old stuff. I've realized that you can enjoy all of Star Wars, and I've realized that the people who are still making Star Wars still care about it. I'm really doing this less because I felt compelled to, and more because we just don't have a Star Wars movie this Christmas. We had Solo. Solo came out on May 25th, at least here in the States, and I loved it. Even if not everyone went to see it, I thought it was great, and it made me even more hopeful about the Star Wars we're going to see down the line. And I guess that's really the point. I don't really know if there is a point. This is just kind of my journey with Disney era. You know, we're kind of all left twiddling our thumbs for a year in this kind of great drought of big screen Star Wars cinema. But there's so much to enjoy between now and then. 2019 is going to be a year packed with Star Wars. We'll have Resistance coming back. We'll have the Clone Wars save season. We'll have The Mandalorian. I don't know when Cassian's going to come out. I don't know if that's going to be in 2019, but it's coming up. But we have great novels. Master and Apprentice, Queen's Shadow, the Age of comics, Age of the Republic, Age of the Rebellion, all of that have started. There's so much to enjoy. And I guess to kind of go from the me that thought it was all over 6 years ago to the me now, I'm just happy. I'm just happy to be here. You may have noticed that I haven't talked about discourse. I feel like a lot of the people who've been making these videos have been talking about the discourse in the wake of The Last Jedi. I'm not going to do that. I'm going to do this one thing. I'm just going to say we have a lot of control over what that discourse is and over that discourse continuing. So I didn't want to make a video about The Last Jedi discourse because I'm really over it. I'm not over The Last Jedi. I still have videos about The Last Jedi I want to make, but I'm really over talking about how we talk about The Last Jedi. Now, if that is the type of thing that interests you, some friends of the channel, Star Wars Ramblings, did a fantastic video about that, and at Chat did a fantastic video about that, and I highly recommend watching both of their kind of 1 year later videos. But I wanted to come here with a 3 years later video, I guess, to talk about where we've been and where we've come since the Disney announcement, so 6 years, I guess, and since The Force Awakens. So I hope it's been a fun journey for you guys following Disney. I gotta say, I can't thank you guys enough for those of you who follow the channel and who watch our stuff, who comment. Our comment section defies every stereotype of a YouTube comment section, and I only have everyone but me to thank for that. So I appreciate those of you who hang out and have just helped build this community here. And that means a lot, and that's pretty much the reason why I'm still doing this. So thank you, all of you. Here's to 4 years later when we can be discussing episode 9. But please, leave a comment. Let me know what you've thought about how things have been going in the Disney era. Follow us on Twitter at Porthaven Forums. Visit port-haven.com for more. I really, really, really encourage you guys to join the Discord. It's kind of the next step in our hope to grow a Star Wars community. We're really trying to grow a community more than we are a channel. Just a place where a bunch of fans can kind of come together and talk about Star Wars. So it would mean a lot to me if you guys would consider checking that out. But until next time, keep it real and fly casual.
Cooking can be fun!